حي ذو امتنان أولى وما له مكان سبحانه قد جل عن أين وكيف وزمان.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, بيان أقسام الكفر, clarification of the divisions of blasphemy. وَاعْلَمْ يَا أَخِي الْمُسْلِمِ, know, my fellow Muslim, أن هناك اعتقادات وأفعالا وأقوالا تنقض الشهادتين وتوقع في الكفر. That there are convictions and actions and sayings that nullify the two shahadas and drop one into kufr. Tuqi' makes one fall into kufr. لأن الكفر ثلاثة أنواع, because the blasphemy is three types. كفر اعتقادي وكفر فعلي وكفر لفظي. Blasphemous conviction, blasphemous action, and blasphemous expression. وذلك باتفاق المذاهب الأربعة, and that is by the agreement of the four schools. كالنووي وابن المقري من الشافعية, like An-Nawawi and Ibn al-Muqri from the Shafi'is. وابن عابدين من الحنفية, and Ibn Abidin from the Hanafis. وَالْبُهُوتِيِّ مِنَ الْحَنَابِلَةِ, and Al-Buhuti from the Hanbalis. وَالشَّيْخِ مُحَمَّدٍ عِلَّيْشِ مِنَ الْمَالِكِيَّةِ, and Shaykh Muhammad Illaysh from the Malikis. وَغَيْرِهِمْ, and others. فَلْيَنْظُرْهَا مَنْ شَاءَ, so let look at them whoever wants. وكذلك غير علماء المذاهب الأربعة من المجتهدين الماضين, and likewise other than the scholars of the four schools amongst the past mujtahids. كالأوزاعي, like Al-Awza'i, فإنه كان مجتهدا, for indeed he was a mujtahid. له مذهب, he had a madhab. كان يعمل به, it was practiced. ثم انقرض أتباعه, then his followers went extinct. Yani, people stopped practicing his madhab. How is that? By not transmitting it anymore. That means no one is learning it and passing it on. So what is it that made the four madhabs stay? It was that they had continuous followers always. There never ceased to be people who were taking and passing that madhab. As for the madhab of Al-Awza'i and Sufyan, etc., there did cease to be those who were taking and passing that madhab until it was lost. So what remains is knowing some of their judgments, knowing some of their sayings, but not having the entire madhab documented, like the four. Ash-SharH, the explanation, أن مما استدل به أهل الحق على أن الكفر ثلاثة أقسام آيات. The explanation is that among what proves, or among what the people of the truth used to prove that blasphemy is three divisions, is verses. Minha qawluhu ta'ala, among them is his saying, exalted is he. يحلفون بالله ما قالوا ولقد قالوا كلمة الكفر وكفروا بعد إسلامهم. Which means they swear by Allah that they did not say it. And by Allah they said the word of blasphemy, and they blasphemed after their Islam. وَلَقَدْ قَالُوا, there is a swear. وَلَقَدْ, it's implied as what? وَاللَّهِ لَقَدْ. So, يَحْلِفُونَ بِاللَّهِ مَا قَالُوا, they swear by Allah that they did not say the blasphemy. وَلَقَدْ قَالُوا, and wallahi they did say كَلِمَةَ الْكُفْرِ, the word of blasphemy. وَكَفَرُوا بَعْدَ إِسْلَامِهِمْ, and they blasphemed after their Islam. فَهَذِهِ الْآيَةُ يُفْهَمُ مِنْهَا أَنَّ الْكُفْرَ مِنْهُ قَوْلِي. Thus, this verse, it is understood from it that the blasphemy amongst it is what is stated, said. وَقَوْلُهُ تَعَالَى, and his saying, exalted is he, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ ثُمَّ لَمْ يَرْتَابُوا, which means merely the believers are those who believed in Allah and His Messenger, then they did not doubt, or only. فهذه الآية يفهم منها أن الكفر منه اعتقادي. Thus, this verse, it is understood from it that the blasphemy among it is what is creedal, creedal, pertains to belief. لأن الارتياب أي الشك يكون بالقلب, because irtiyab, uncertainty, meaning shak, doubt, is in the heart. وَقَوْلُهُ تَعَالَى, and his saying, exalted is he, لَا تَسْجُدُوا لِلشَّمْسِ وَلَا لِلْقَمَرِ, do not prostrate to the sun, nor to the moon. يُفْهَمُ مِنْهُ أَنَّ الْكُفْرَ مِنْهُ فِعْلِيٌّ, understood from it is that the blasphemy among it is what is an action. فهذه المسألة إجماعية اتفق عليها علماء المذاهب الأربعة, and so this case is a case of consensus. Agreed about it did the scholars of the four schools. وكل من الثلاثة كفر بمفرده, and each of the three is blasphemy independently, on its own, by its individuality, بمفرده. فالكفر القولي كفر ولو لم يقترن به اعتقاد ولا فعل. Thus, the blasphemous saying is blasphemy, even if it were not accompanied by or associated with a conviction or an action. وَالْكُفْرُ الْفِعْلِيُّ كُفْرٌ, and the blasphemous action is blasphemy. وَلَوْ لَمْ يَقْتَرِنْ بِهِ اعْتِقَادٌ وَانْشِرَاحُ الصَّدْرِ بِهِ وَلَا قَوْلٌ, even if it were not accompanied by a conviction and by reception of the chest, nor was the heart or the chest receptive of it, nor a saying. وَالْكُفْرُ الْاِعْتِقَادِيُّ كُفْرٌ, and the creedal blasphemy is blasphemy. وَلَوْ لَمْ يَقْتَرِنْ بِهِ قَوْلٌ وَلَا فِعْلٌ, even if it were not accompanied by a saying nor an action. Al-iqtiran, yaqtarin, from iqtiran, qaf ra nun, means to accompany. And that's why the devil who accompanies each one is called qareen. A qareen, an associate. Now, by the way, just so it's clear, the word shirk, we often translate it as association. Now, this word iqtiran, I'm saying associate sometimes. I'm actually trying to avoid that word so that they don't get mixed up. So what does shirk mean? What's the difference between a shirk and al-iqtiran? Shirk means like sharing. We say making a partner, or associating a partner, or associating. It means sharing. A sharika is a partnership. What did we say here previously? Shaykh said, here's the statement. ثم شاركه ابن تيمية في نصف عقيدته. Then Ibn Taymiyyah شاركه, he shared with him in half of his conviction. And that form, شارك, that's a mutual form. That means goes back and forth. Iqtiran means to be with, to come along with. So that's the difference between those two, even if the translation might come close or be the same. وإنما يشترط للقول الكفري انشراح الصدر في المكره على قول الكفر بالقتل ونحوه. Conditional for the blasphemous saying is reception of the chest only in the case of the one who's compelled or coerced, forced to say the blasphemy, coerced by the threat of killing and the like, the threat of murder and the like. The like means what leads to killing, like cutting off his arms and legs. In this case, be careful. If you want to talk about the case of exempting one from blasphemy, be careful. Don't try to be so exact and precise here so that you wind up saying something is excusing one from blasphemy when it's not. Yani, what did Shaykh say here? Shaykh himself, he stayed safe. He said, بِالْقَتْلِ وَنَحْوِهِ, by killing and the like. We did learn. Like what? Like cutting off the arms and the legs. Now, well, somebody's going to ask you, what about cutting off one arm? Just say it that way. Say it the way it was said. Inshallah, you won't be under the threat of getting one arm cut off only. And if you are, perhaps you'll become a knowledgeable person by that time so that you know the judgment. But take it easy on yourself here. If you're teaching someone here, you don't have to go far so that you make it tight on yourself. Say what's true and stop inside a very safe range of what's true. Like getting your arms and legs cut off, for example. That's true. That's a true statement. فالمكره هو الذي لا يكفر لمجرد القول بعد أن أكره إلا أن يشرح صدره بما يقوله. So the coerced one or the compelled one, he is the one who does not blaspheme for the merely saying the blasphemy after being threatened or compelled. Ukriha. Ukriha means compelled, forced. It means made to do what you dislike. Kaf ra ha al-kurh. Al-kurh is dislikeness, repugnance. Karaha. If something has karaha, you call it makruh. It's makruh, it's disliked, unfavored. So if you akrahta shakhsan, you made him do what he didn't want to do. That's compulsion. So, فالمكره هو الذي لا يكفر لمجرد القول بعد أن أكره. So the mukrah, the compelled, coerced, forced one, he's the one who does not blaspheme by merely saying, by the mere saying of blasphemy after the compulsion or the coercion. Illa, or after he was coerced, ukriha, he was coerced. Illa an yashraha sadrahu bima yaquluh, unless he makes his chest receptive to what he says. فعندئذ يكفر, upon that he would blaspheme. لأن المسلم المكره على قول الكفر إن قال كلمة الكفر لإنقاذ نفسه مما هدده به الكفار, because the coerced Muslim, the Muslim coerced to say the statement of blasphemy, if he said the word of blasphemy to save himself from what the blasphemers have threatened him, وَقَلْبُهُ غَيْرُ مُنْشَرِحٍ, and his heart is not receptive, غَيْرُ مُنْشَرِحٍ بِمَا يَقُولُهُ, his heart is not receptive of what he is saying, فَلَا يُحْكَمُ بِكُفْرِهِ, then he is not judged with blasphemy. Tahdeed is threat. So there's a difference between linguistically a tahdeed and an ikrah. Tahdeed is a threat. Ikrah is compulsion or coercion. Ikrah means jabr, to be forced, to have no choice. Tahdeed means to be threatened, like wa'id, threat. وأما إن تغير خاطره بعد الإكراه فشرح صدره بقول الكفر كفر. And as for if his mind changes after the compulsion, and so his chest, he makes his chest receptive to the saying of the blasphemy, he blasphemes. وَهَذَا مَعْنَى قَوْلِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى, and this is the meaning of the saying of Allah, exalted is He, مَنْ كَفَرَ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ إِيمَانِهِ إِلَّا مَنْ أُكْرِهَ وَقَلْبُهُ مُطْمَئِنٌّ بِالْإِيمَانِ ولكن من شرح بالكفر صدرا فعليهم غضب من الله ولهم عذاب عظيم. It means whoever blasphemed, whoever disbelieved in Allah after his faith, meaning after he had faith, after he believed, then he blasphemes, except who was compelled while his heart was tranquil with faith. However, whoever his chest was receptive of the blasphemy, that's a rough translation, and he accepts the blasphemy in his heart, فَعَلَيْهِمْ غَضَبٌ, then upon them is the ghadab, فَعَلَيْهِمْ غَضَبٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ, which is his will to torture. A ghadab from Allah. Literally, ghadab means anger. وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ, and for them is a great torture. فألغى هذا الحكم الشرعي الذي اتفق عليه علماء الإسلام وجاءت به هذه الآية فألغى هذا الحكم الشرعي الذي اتفق عليه علماء الإسلام وجاءت به هذه الآية أشخاص من أهل هذا العصر, and so nullified this religious judgment which the scholars of Islam have agreed about. This religious judgment that the scholars of Islam have agreed about, and this religious judgment by which this ayah of the Quran has come, nullified it some people from this time. أشخاص من هذا العصر أحدهم سيد سابق في كتابه فقه السنة. One of them is Sayyid Sabiq in his book Fiqh al-Sunnah. And Hassan Qaturji, and also Hassan Qaturji. فَلْيَحْذَرْ هَؤُلَاءِ فَهَؤُلَاءِ حَرَّفُوا شَرْعَ اللَّهِ وَخَالَفُوا حُكَّامَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ مِنَ الْخُلَفَاءِ وَنُوَّابِهِمْ. So beware of those have perverted the law of Allah, and they opposed the Muslim rulers among the caliphs and their appointees. فإنهم لم يكونوا يقولون للشخص الذي تكلم بكلمة الكفر والردة عند تقديمه إليهم للحكم عليه: هل كنت شارحا صدرك بما قلت من قول الكفر؟ For indeed, they did not used to say to the person who spoke with a word of blasphemy and apostasy when he was presented to them for judgment, for his verdict: were you receptive in your heart of what you said of blasphemy? They didn't used to do that. Because those cases of saying blasphemy are like other cases of statements. If you notice, there's some general rules about statements that we learned, right? Didn't we learn about explicit divorce and implicit divorce? And that if a person says it intentionally, explicitly, and intentionally, the divorce takes place. We don't ask him what did he mean by it. Same thing in blasphemy. There's explicit sale and implicit sale. There's explicit divorce even if he was playing. So it's like that. They don't ask him, well, what did you mean by that? You don't say to the person who just gave his daughter away in marriage, well, hold on, brother. What exactly did you mean? بل كانوا يجرون عليه حكم الردة بمجرد اعترافه. Rather, they used to apply to him the judgment of apostasy by his mere confession, أو شهادة شاهدين, or by the testimony of two witnesses, أو شهادة شاهدين عليه, or the testimony of two witnesses against him, بأنه قال كلمة كذا من الكفر, that he said such and such of blasphemy. وهذه كتب التواريخ الإسلامية تشهد بذلك. And these books of Islamic history testify to that. في الوقائع التي ذكرت فيها, in the incidents that are mentioned in them. كواقعة قتل الحلاج, like the incident of the execution of Al-Hallaj. فإنه أصدر عليه حكم الردة لقوله أنا الحق. For indeed, it was أصدر عليه, ruled against him the judgment of apostasy, or upon him the judgment of apostasy, for his saying أنا الحق, I am al-haq, and al-haq. So I asked, and al-haq, maybe he meant something else. Why did he say he's an apostate for that? Because I'm translating in my mind. If someone said, I am the truth, it doesn't come to my mind that he's saying, I'm God. So I asked, that's explicit? Maybe he meant something else by saying, and al-haq. So the sheikh that I said that to, that's Shaykh Muhammad Atrash. He's one of the two Muhammads who did Al-Qawl Al-Jali. He said, well, what would he mean then by an al-haq? And then I didn't find an answer. I don't know what else he could have meant by that. And then once I was silent, he said, this is explicit. So, هكذا. أي أن Allah, he meant I am Allah. وَنَحْوِ ذَلِكَ مِنْ كَلِمَاتِ الرِّدَّةِ, and the likes of that of words of apostasy. Many things were reported about Al-Hallaj. One day, inshallah, we'll go over some of that. فأصدر القاضي أبو عمر المالكي في بغداد أيام الخليفة المقتدر بالله حكما عليه. المقتدر. And so Judge Abu Umar the Maliki in Baghdad in the days of the Caliph Al-Muqtadir Billah, he gave a verdict against him. أصدر حكما عليه. فقطعت يداه ورجلاه ثم قطعت رقبته ثم أحرقت جثته ثم ذر رماده في دجلة. And so his hands and feet were amputated, and he was decapitated. Then he was cremated, and his ashes were thrown into the Tigris. وَهَذَا التَّشْدِيدُ عَلَيْهِ لِيَرْتَدِعَ أَتْبَاعُهُ. And this severe punishment was to frighten his followers. لِأَنَّهُ كَانَ لَهُ أَتْبَاعُ, because he had followers. عُرِفُوا بِالْحَلَّاجِيَّةِ. They were known as the Hallajis. That's also why Imam Ali burned alive those who worshipped him during those days. Once he did that, then the rest of them who weren't arrested and executed, they shut their mouths, too afraid to say anything. وكان الإمام الجنيد رضي الله عنه سيد الطائفة الصوفية تفرس فيه بما آل إليه أمره. And the Imam al-Junaid, may Allah accept his deeds, the sire of the Sufi party, he had a premonition about him, about his fate. Yani he had a premonition that actually came true. تفرس فيه بما آل إليه أمره, meaning what actually wound up happening to Al-Hallaj, Imam Al-Junaid, he had a premonition about that. لأنه قال للحلاج لقد فتحت في الإسلام ثغرة لا يسدها إلا رأسك. Because he said to Al-Hallaj, Al-Hallaj, you have opened in Islam a hole that will not be filled but by your head. You have opened a hole that nothing fills but your head. Or, لا يسده, takes that space, fills that space. وجهلة المتصوفة خالفوا سيد الصوفية الجنيد. And the ignorant Sufi claimers, they opposed the master of the Sufis, sire of the Sufis, Al-Junaid. فصاروا يهونون أمر النطق بكلمات الردة. So they started being negligent about uttering words of apostasy. ممن ينتسب إلى التصوف, concerning those who are attributed to tasawwuf. فلا يكفرون أحدا منهم, so they don't charge with kufr any of them. لقول أنا الله أو أنا الحق. When one of them says I am Allah or I am al-haq, they don't charge him with kufr. أو قال إن الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم يعلم جميع ما يعلمه الله. Or when they say that the messenger indeed knows all of what Allah knows. أو إن الله يحل في الأشخاص. Or that certainly they say Allah dwells in people. أو إن الله كان واحدا ثم صار كثيرا. Or they say that Allah was one, but then he multiplied and became many. فيزعمون أن العالم أجزاء من الله. And so they claim that the world is pieces of Allah.
سبحانه قد جل عن أين وكيف وزمان